I, 45F, am a senior software engineer at one of Silicon Valley's leading tech companies. After what just happened with my family, I'm still shaking while typing this, but I need to share my story and get some outside perspective. Ever since I can remember, I've been the black sheep in my family. While my sister Rachel, 38F, was the golden child with her perfect blonde curls and charming personality, I was the quiet one who preferred experimenting with my chemistry set to socializing. The contrast between us was stark from the beginning, and my parents never really tried to hide their preference. Let me take you back to my childhood, because I think it's important to understand the pattern. When I was 8, I won my first science competition at school. I created a working model of the solar system, complete with orbital patterns. My teacher was impressed enough to call my parents personally. You'd think they'd be proud, right? Wrong. They missed the awards ceremony because Rachel had a dance recital. But honey, Rachel needs us there. She gets nervous without us watching, Mom explained while fixing Rachel's hair. The pattern was set early. My achievements were always secondary to Rachel's activities, no matter how trivial hers might be. I still remember my 10th birthday vividly. I had been dropping hints for weeks about wanting a microscope. Instead, I got a frilly pink dress that made me look like a cupcake. When I protested, "But Mom, I hate dresses," she just beamed and said, "Nonsense, you'll look just like Rachel," completely missing the point. Throughout middle school and high school, the divide only widened. Rachel breezed through school on charm and looks, while I buried myself in books and science experiments. Her C+ grades were celebrated because, at least she's trying, while my straight A's were expected and hardly acknowledged. The science fair incident in my senior year still stings when I think about it. I'd spent months perfecting my project on sustainable biofuels. When they announced the winners, I could hardly believe my ears. First place goes to Carla. It was the state science fair, not just some school competition. But that evening at dinner, when I tried to share my excitement, Mom cut me off mid-sentence. "That's nice, dear," she said absently, before turning to Rachel. "Princess, have you decided on your prom dress yet? We need to start looking soon." Dad didn't even look up from his newspaper. The trophy I'd won sat gathering dust on a shelf while Rachel's participation ribbons from dance recitals were prominently displayed in the living room. The college acceptance letter incident was probably when I finally accepted that nothing I did would ever be enough for them. When my acceptance letter arrived with a full scholarship to a prestigious tech university, I was ecstatic. I ran into the living room waving the letter, "Mom, Dad, I got in. Full ride and everything." Mom glanced up from her magazine. "That's nice, dear." "Rachel, didn't you say you needed help picking out your prom dress?" And just like that, my big moment was brushed aside again. College was my first taste of freedom, and it was transformative. Suddenly, my passion for technology wasn't weird or nerdy, it was respected, even admired. I threw myself into computer science with a vigor that surprised even me. While Rachel struggled through community college, more interested in parties than classes, I was thriving in my new environment. "College is so hard," Rachel would whine during our rare phone calls. "I don't know how you do it, Carla." I bit back the urge to point out that maybe if she spent less time partying and more time studying, she might find it easier. Instead, I just mumbled some vague encouragement and changed the subject. During my sophomore year, Rachel dropped her bombshell. She was engaged to David, 42M, her high school sweetheart. You know, the guy who once asked me if science was, like, really hard and stuff. Their wedding was exactly what you'd expect. Rachel was radiant, David looked uncomfortable in his tuxedo, and I stood there in a pink nightmare of a bridesmaid dress, pasting on a smile for the photos. "Isn't this perfect?" Mom whispered to me during the reception. This is what every mother dreams of for her daughter. I wanted to ask if she'd ever dreamed anything for me, but I held my tongue. It was Rachel's day, after all. While I threw myself into building my career in tech, Rachel's life seemed to follow a script straight out of our parents' dreams. Within a year of her wedding, she announced her first pregnancy. Sophie, 8F, arrived 9 months later, followed by Nathan, 6M, 2 years after that. Meanwhile, I was making strides in my career. I started as a junior developer at a small startup, working countless late nights and weekends. When that company was acquired by a major tech giant, I was one of the few employees they kept on. I worked my way up from middle management to senior engineer, then to team lead, and finally to my current position as senior software architect. Each promotion, each achievement was met with the same response from my family: "That's nice, dear. Did we tell you Sophie got the lead in her school play?" Or, "How lovely. Did you hear Nathan made the T-ball team?" I lived frugally, saving every bonus and stock option, while watching Rachel and David buy new cars and take expensive vacations. When I finally found my dream house last year, a beautiful 4-bedroom home in a great neighborhood, I was over the moon. 20 years of hard work had finally paid off. "Mom, Dad, I bought a house," I announced during our next phone call. There was a pause on the other end of the line. "A house?" Mom repeated slowly. "All by yourself?" "Yes, all by myself," I said, my excitement deflating a little. "It's a great investment and—" "But it's such a big house for one person," Mom interrupted. "What will you do with all that space?" "I'll enjoy it, Mom. It's mine." "Well," she said, her tone making it clear she didn't approve, "I suppose if that's what you want." "Oh, did I tell you Sophie lost her first tooth yesterday?" The months following my house purchase were a whirlwind of work and settling in. I threw myself into decorating, turning each room into a reflection of my personality. The master bedroom became my sanctuary, the second bedroom my home office, the third my library, and the fourth my home laboratory where I could work on personal projects. But during this time, I started to notice a shift in my family's dynamics. The usual calls from my parents became less frequent, and when they did call, there was an odd tension in their voices. Then last week, Mom called. "Carla, dear," she said, her voice sickly sweet, "we're having a family dinner next Sunday. You'll be there, won't you? We need to talk about something important." In my family, "we need to talk" usually means trouble is brewing. Still, nothing could have prepared me for what happened at that dinner. Rachel's kids were running around shrieking while David kept clearing his throat nervously. After dessert, Dad cleared his throat and said, "Carla, we need to talk about your house." I felt my hackles rise. "What about my house?" "Well, you see, sweetie," he continued, exchanging glances with Mom, "we've been thinking. That big house of yours, it's really too much for just one person." "Dad, we've been over this. I like my house. It's mine." Mom jumped in, "What your father is trying to say is that Rachel and her family need more space. The kids are growing, and their apartment is getting cramped." I looked at Rachel, who was suddenly very interested in her plate. "And?" I prompted, though I had a sinking feeling I knew where this was going. "And we think," Mom continued, her voice dripping with condescension, "that since you're single and have no children, you should give your house to Rachel and her family." I waited for someone to yell "Gotcha," and reveal it was all a joke. But all I saw were expectant faces. "You can't be serious," I finally managed. "Now Carla," Mom said patronizingly, "don't be selfish. Rachel needs the space more than you do." "Selfish?" I repeated, my voice rising. "How is it selfish to want to keep the house I worked hard for and paid for myself?" "It's your sisterly duty to help in times of need," Dad chimed in. I turned to Rachel. "And what do you have to say about this?" She shrugged, finally meeting my eyes. "Well, it would be nice to have more space for the kids. And it's not like you're using all those rooms anyway." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My own family was asking me to give up my home, acting like I was the unreasonable one for refusing. "No," I said firmly, standing up. "Absolutely not. I'm not giving up my house." As I grabbed my coat and headed for the door, I heard Dad call out, "Think about it, Carla. Family should come first." The days following that disastrous family dinner have been a nightmare. First came the constant calls and messages from my parents and Rachel, which I ignored. Then the flying monkeys were deployed. Relatives I haven't spoken to in years suddenly had very strong opinions about my house and my life choices. Aunt Beatrice called first, "Your poor sister needs a home for her children, and you're living all alone in that big house." Shame on you. When I tried to explain that it was my house, bought with my own money, she cut me off. In my day, family helped family. We didn't hoard our resources like misers. Then came the real kicker. Well, if you're not going to use all that space, you should at least consider donating your eggs. It's not like you're using them anyway. I was so shocked I nearly dropped the phone. Before I could respond, she added primly, "You're not getting any younger, you know." Tick-tock. Great Aunt Edna left a voicemail, "Carla dear, it's not too late to find a nice man and settle down. Then you'd need that big house." Uncle Robert texted, "Your sister has a family. What do you need 4 bedrooms for? Your work?" The messages kept coming, each one more presumptuous than the last. Every relative seemed to have an opinion about my life choices and what I should do with my property. I've started staying late at work just to avoid going home to more messages. My phone buzzes constantly with new judgments and guilt trips. I've blocked several numbers, but they just keep coming from new ones. Tonight, though, something feels different. Call it intuition or paranoia, but I have this nagging feeling that my family might try something drastic. Rachel's last message was particularly ominous. "You'll see reason eventually. One way or another. I need advice, Reddit. Am I really being selfish? Should I just give in to keep the peace? Or should I stand my ground and risk being completely ostracized from my family? And most importantly, should I be worried about that last message from Rachel?" Update 1. 2 weeks have passed since my initial post about my family trying to force me to give up my house. What happened yesterday morning has left me completely shaken, and I need to share this unbelievable update. I've been working from home with a bad cold for the past few days, nothing serious, just enough that my boss insisted I rest. Around 10 a.m., while I was on a video call with my team, I heard something that made my blood run cold, the sound of someone trying to unlock my front door. At first, I thought I was imagining things, but then I heard distinctive whispers and the unmistakable jingle of keys. I muted my call, crept to the front window, and what I saw made my jaw drop. There, on my porch, were my parents, Rachel, and David, along with a moving truck parked in my driveway. I flung open the door, catching them red-handed. Mom was actually holding a set of keys. They must have made copies when they helped me move in last year. "Carla." Mom jumped, nearly dropping the keys. We thought you'd be at work. So you decided to break into my house?" I couldn't keep the incredulity out of my voice. Dad at least had the decency to look embarrassed, but Rachel stepped forward, all righteous indignation. "You're being completely unreasonable about this, Carla. We thought if we just took the initiative." That's when I noticed more details that made my blood boil. The moving truck was already half full of furniture. They had actually planned to move Rachel's family in while I was supposedly at work. "We were just going to wait for you to come home," Rachel said, as if that made it better. "No, you weren't," I snapped, gesturing to the truck. "You were planning to move in while I was gone." Just then, I noticed movement across the street. My neighbor, Mrs. Johnson, was watching from her window, phone in hand. She caught my eye and mouthed, "Police?" I nodded gratefully. "I've called the police," I announced, my voice shaking but firm. "You wouldn't," my father scoffed. "Your own family?" As if on cue, the sound of sirens filled the air. The color drained from my family's faces as a police car pulled up. 2 officers approached, taking in the scene. "Is there a problem here?" one asked, eyeing the moving truck suspiciously. "Yes, officer," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "These people were attempting to break into my home." "Carla," my mother gasped. "How could you?" The officers looked at my family. "Is this true?" My father started stammering out an explanation, but the officer held up a hand. "Sir, attempting to enter a property without the owner's permission is a serious offense. I'm going to need to see some ID from everyone." What followed was both satisfying and heartbreaking. The officers took statements, documented the copied keys, and photographed the moving truck. They explained that while they wouldn't make arrests this time, they would file a report, and any further attempts would result in criminal charges. As they were being escorted off my property, Rachel turned back. "You'll regret this, Carla. You'll end up old and alone." After everyone left, I collapsed on my couch, shaking. But the day wasn't over yet. About an hour later, I received a call from an unexpected source, my mother's sister, Aunt Margaret, Maggie. "Carla," she said gently, "I heard what happened. There's something you need to know about why they're really after your house." What she told me left me stunned. Apparently, she works at the bank where my family does their business, and she's noticed some very concerning patterns. Rachel and David are deeply in debt, not just from living beyond their means with luxury cars and expensive vacations, but because David has a serious gambling problem. He's been secretly draining their accounts for years. But it gets worse. My parents lost a significant amount of money in a pyramid scheme a few years back. They've been barely keeping their heads above water, and they were planning to move in with Rachel and David once they got my house. "I confronted your mother about it," Maggie explained. "That's why she stopped talking to me last year. I've been watching this train wreck happen in slow motion, and I couldn't stay quiet any longer. Now I understand why they were so desperate to get my house. They're all on the verge of financial collapse. They didn't just want my house, they needed it as a financial lifeline. I've spent the rest of the day changing my locks, installing security cameras, and documenting everything. I'm also looking into getting a restraining order, just in case. Aunt Maggie has suggested we hire a private investigator to get concrete evidence of everything. She thinks there might be even more to this story that we don't know yet. I feel like I'm living in a bad soap opera. How did my life turn into this? I'll update again once we learn more from the investigator. For now, I'm safe in my house, but I can't help wondering what other secrets my family is hiding. Thank you all for your support and advice. It turns out I needed those security cameras even more than we thought. Update 2, the findings of our private investigator Diana have left me stunned. I wasn't prepared for how deep this rabbit hole would go. Diana met with Aunt Maggie and me yesterday at a quiet cafe far from my family's usual haunts. What she revealed made my attempted house theft look like just the tip of the iceberg. David has been leading a double life. Not only did Diana confirm his gambling addiction, but she uncovered an affair with my cousin Jenny that's been going on for 2 years. He's been spending money on luxury hotels, expensive gifts, and weekend getaways, all while Rachel and my parents struggled financially. "Look at these credit card statements," Diana showed us. "Regular charges at the Grand Hotel, jewelry purchases from Tiffany's, weekend trips to Vegas, all matching your cousin Jenny's social media posts from the same locations. But here's where it gets even more twisted: the money David used for his lavish affair. A significant portion came from my parents. They had been giving him loans for what they thought was a business investment. Instead, he was using it to fund his double life. Diana even found evidence of David setting up a separate bank account in the Cayman Islands. He's been siphoning money from my parents' retirement fund, convincing them it was for a high-yield investment opportunity. In reality, he's been using it to cover his gambling losses and maintain his affair with Jenny. Your parents' retirement account has been nearly drained," Diana explained, sliding over more documents. "They've been living on credit cards, believing David's promises that a big return on investment is just around the corner." The most shocking revelation came when Diana discovered emails between David and Jenny discussing their plan to use my house as collateral for a loan to cover their tracks before Rachel discovered the truth. "They were planning to take out a second mortgage on your house," Diana explained. "The paperwork was already being prepared. They just needed to get physical possession of the property first. That's why they attempted the break-in. They weren't just trying to move Rachel and the kids in, they were racing against time to secure the house before their whole financial house of cards collapsed." Aunt Maggie, who had been quietly reviewing the documents, suddenly spoke up. "There's more," she said, her voice tight. "Look at these transfer dates. They align perfectly with your Uncle Bob's business's supposed expansion and dates." The implication hit me like a truck. Uncle Bob, Jenny's father, had been unknowingly funding his daughter's affair with his business loans to David. "I've decided to call a family meeting. Everyone will be there: my parents, Rachel, David, Uncle Bob and Aunt Clara, Jenny, and all the other relatives who've been harassing me about my house. Tomorrow at 2 p.m., in my home, the very home they tried to steal, I'll lay all of this evidence on the table. Diana has prepared a comprehensive presentation of her findings, complete with bank statements, hotel receipts, photos, and email records. Aunt Maggie will be there to confirm the banking details, and I've hired security to ensure things don't get out of hand. You need to be prepared, Diana warned me. When cornered, people like this tend to lash out. They might try to blame you for investigating them, for you destroying the family. I know she's right, but I'm done being the family doormat. Tomorrow, everything changes. Part of me feels guilty about exposing this in front of everyone, especially Rachel and Uncle Bob. They're both victims in this too. But after years of being treated like a second-class family member, after being expected to give up my home to cover for their lies, I can't find it in my heart to be gentle about this. The security cameras are installed, the evidence is organized, and tomorrow, my family will learn that the quiet, predictable sister they've taken for granted has finally had enough. I'll update again after the meeting. Something tells me it's going to be explosive. For now, I'm sitting in my home office, looking at these documents and trying to process how the family that made me feel selfish for not giving up my house was actually planning to use it to cover up their own web of lies and deceit. Update 3, the dust has finally settled after the explosive family meeting, and my life has taken a completely unexpected turn. I want to share how everything played out and where things stand now. The confrontation went exactly as Diana predicted. When I presented the evidence of David's affair with Jenny and their financial schemes, the room erupted into chaos. Uncle Bob lunged at David, having to be restrained by the security guards. Rachel collapsed in tears, while Jenny tried to flee the room only to find the door blocked by Aunt Maggie. The most satisfying moment came when I revealed my ace card, recordings of David and Jenny discussing their plans to use my house as collateral for loans. The color drained from my parents' faces as they realized the true extent of their investment opportunity. I took decisive action in the aftermath. First, I reported David's financial fraud to his company's ethics committee. Within 24 hours, he was placed on administrative leave pending investigation. By the end of the week, he was terminated for violations of corporate financial policies. His professional licenses were also suspended. Next, with Diana's evidence, I helped Uncle Bob initiate legal proceedings to recover his business loans. The documentation was damning. David had misrepresented the entire investment scheme. The case was settled out of court, but David's remaining assets were seized. My parents faced their own reckoning. The bank launched an investigation into their accounts after I reported the suspicious activities. They were forced to sell their house to cover their debts and now live in a small rented apartment, all 5 of them crammed together, just as they had planned to do in my house. Rachel filed for divorce after discovering the full extent of David's betrayal. She tried to apologize to me, claiming she had no idea about his plans for my house, but I find that hard to believe given her active participation in the attempted break-in. The most unexpected development in all this has been my relationship with Alex, 50M, who I met at my local rock climbing gym. He's a wildlife photographer who spends half his time traveling the world capturing images of endangered species. Unlike my family, he immediately understood and respected my career and independence. Our relationship progressed naturally and without pressure. He has his own successful career and home, and we enjoy our independence while supporting each other's dreams. Last week, he set up his photography equipment in my home lab, joking that the lighting was perfect for both his wildlife shots and my circuit board documentation. Aunt Maggie has become my true family. We have weekly dinner dates where we discuss everything from investment strategies to her wild stories from her youth. Last month, she surprised me by revealing she's updated her will to make me her heir. When I protested, she said, "You're the daughter I never had, Carla. The one who truly understands the value of hard work and integrity." The rest of the family has largely divided into camps. Jenny and David apparently tried to continue their relationship but quickly fell apart once the money dried up. She's moved to another state, while he's taken a job at a used car dealership in Nevada, a far cry from his former executive position. My parents and Rachel still try to contact me occasionally, usually when they need money. I've blocked their numbers and instructed my lawyer to handle any communications. Their latest attempt was particularly pathetic, a tearful voicemail from Rachel claiming she and the kids were about to be evicted. I learned from Aunt Maggie that they had plenty of money for rent, they were just trying to emotionally manipulate me again. The most gratifying change has been in my professional life. Without the constant drain of family drama, I've been able to focus fully on my career. I was recently promoted to Chief Technology Officer at my company, something I might not have achieved if I was still dealing with their constant demands and emotional manipulation. My house has truly become my home. I've turned the space they once tried to steal into a sanctuary. The home lab has been upgraded with state-of-the-art equipment, and one of the bedrooms has become a combined library and photography studio where Alex and I work on our respective projects. The security cameras that I initially installed for protection now mainly capture wildlife in my backyard. Alex has even set up a few specialized cameras to document the family of foxes that have made their home under my deck. It's a beautiful irony that my house, which my family claimed was too big for one person, is now filled with more love and purpose than they could have imagined. I've learned that family isn't about blood ties or obligations. It's about mutual respect, support, and understanding. Aunt Maggie, Alex, and my close friends have shown me what real family looks like. They celebrate my successes instead of diminishing them, support my choices instead of criticizing them, and love me for who I am rather than who they think I should be. To those who supported me through this journey, thank you. Your advice and encouragement helped me stand firm when my biological family tried to steamroll me. And to anyone facing similar family pressure, remember that you have the right to protect what you've worked for, regardless of family expectations. My story isn't about revenge, though some might see it that way. It's about finally breaking free from toxic family dynamics and creating a life filled with genuine love and respect. Sometimes the family you choose is better than the family you're born into. The irony isn't lost on me that by trying to take my house, my family ultimately lost everything, while I gained a true family and a genuine happiness I never knew was possible.